The mountain lodge had seemed like the perfect escape for Victoria Chun. She was 43 and exhausted from years of running her consulting firm in Boston. All she wanted was 3 days of silence and snow. But nature had other plans. The blizzard hit on her second night, and the power failed within an hour. Victoria sat in the main room wrapped in her coat as the temperature dropped. She wasn't alone. Across from her sat a man named Thomas Reed. He looked to be in his early 40s with kind eyes and graying temples. He'd been reading a paperback when the lights went out. Now they both stared at the dying embers in the fireplace. "I'm going to check the supply closet for blankets," Thomas said, standing up. His voice was calm and steady. Victoria nodded and watched him disappear down the hallway. When he returned, he carried an armful of wool blankets and 2 emergency candles. "The lodge keeper left yesterday before the storm," he explained. "We're on our own until morning." Victoria felt a flutter of anxiety, but pushed it down. She'd handled boardrooms full of hostile executives. She could handle one cold night. Thomas arranged the blankets near the fireplace and added the last pieces of firewood. The flames grew stronger, casting dancing shadows on the walls. "I'm Thomas," he said, offering his hand. "Victoria." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind howl outside. The windows rattled in their frames and snow piled against the glass. "Are you here alone?" Victoria asked finally. Thomas smiled a sad, gentle smile. "My daughter Emma is supposed to join me tomorrow for winter break," he said. "She's 14 and lives with her mother in Portland most of the year." Victoria heard the loneliness in his voice. "Divorce?" she asked quietly. 3 years ago, Thomas said. "I'm a high school teacher, so the schedule works, but I miss her every day." Victoria felt something shift in her chest. This man who spoke so tenderly about his daughter reminded her of what she'd sacrificed for her career. 2 failed relationships and no children. She was successful and respected and utterly alone. "What about you?" Thomas asked. "No kids, no husband," Victoria said. "Just quarterly reports and strategic planning sessions." Thomas didn't respond with the usual platitudes. He just nodded as if he understood. The temperature continued to drop despite the fire. Victoria pulled her blanket tighter, but the cold was seeping into her bones. She noticed Thomas was shivering too. "This isn't going to be enough," she said. Thomas looked at the fire, then at the windows where frost was forming on the inside. "You're right," he admitted. "We need to conserve body heat." Victoria knew he was correct, but the intimacy of it felt overwhelming. She was a woman who controlled every aspect of her life. Sharing warmth with a stranger felt vulnerable in a way she hadn't experienced in decades. "I promise I'm harmless," Thomas said with a slight smile. 20 years of teaching teenagers has made me very respectful of personal space." Victoria surprised herself by laughing. "All right," she said, "but if you snore, I'm pushing you out into the snow." Thomas arranged the blankets into a nest near the fire. They lay down side by side, leaving a careful distance between them. But the cold was relentless. After 30 minutes, Victoria was still shaking. "This isn't working," Thomas said. "Quietly, we need to be closer." Victoria hesitated, then shifted toward him. When their bodies touched, she felt the warmth immediately. Thomas wrapped his arm around her and pulled the blankets over both of them. "Is this okay?" he asked. "Yes," Victoria whispered. They lay like that, listening to the storm. Victoria hadn't been held in over 3 years. She'd forgotten how comforting simple human contact could be. "Can I ask you something?" Thomas said after a while. "Sure. Do you ever wonder if you made the right choices?" Victoria thought about her corner office and her impressive client list. She thought about coming home to an empty apartment every night. Every day, she admitted, "I built something I'm proud of, but I'm not sure what it cost me." Thomas was quiet for a moment. "Emma asked me last month if I regret the divorce," he said. "I told her I regretted the pain, but not the honesty." "What do you mean?" "Her mother and I wanted different lives," Thomas explained. "Staying together would have meant one of us giving up who we really were." Victoria felt tears sting her eyes. She'd spent so long believing that success meant sacrifice. But maybe she'd been sacrificing the wrong things. "I spent my whole life climbing," she said softly. "I forgot to look around and see what I was passing by." Thomas tightened his arm around her. "It's not too late," He said, "That's what I tell my students when they think they failed." They talked through the night about their regrets and hopes. Thomas spoke about wanting to write a book about teaching. Victoria admitted she'd always wanted to mentor young women in business. As dawn approached, the storm began to ease. The fire had long since died, but they were warm under the blankets. Victoria realized she was holding Thomas's hand. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For reminding me what matters." Thomas smiled and squeezed her hand. When the lodgekeeper arrived at noon with a snowplow, Victoria and Thomas exchanged phone numbers. 3 months later, Victoria cut back her hours and started a nonprofit mentoring program. Thomas finished the first chapter of his book. They met for coffee every Sunday. Neither of them knew where it would lead, but for the first time in years, both of them felt hopeful. Sometimes you need to get trapped in a blizzard to find your way home. Sometimes a stranger becomes a person who changes everything. And sometimes the warmth you need isn't just about surviving the cold. If this story warmed your heart, please hit the like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe for more stories about second chances and unexpected connections. And leave a comment telling me about a time when a stranger showed you unexpected kindness. Your story might inspire someone else.